so I ended up selling all of my pet dispensers and my vinyl records, and I just gave myself such a hard time. Like, my gosh, like how much did you spend on this? I think a lot of people go through that process sometimes when they get rid of their things. And so I had to really say, like, that really was just a decision that I thought would make me happy at the time. Like, that is something I tell myself a lot. It's like, I just thought that this was gonna help. And so you can't really shame a previous part of yourself when that person may not have known better.
This is the Personal Finance Show.
Hi, I'm Bo Humphreys, and this is episode 98 of the Personal Finance Show. Sarah Li Cain wants you to be open to opportunities and to make independence a priority. Sarah was born in Hong Kong, grew up in Canada, has lived in Australia, South Korea, and China, and is currently living in the U.S. Sarah worked mainly as a teacher, but the key to her survival and success was to be open to opportunities along the way. Knowing that she couldn't be a teacher in the U.S. if she moved there from China with her husband and new son, Sarah looked into ways to make money online. Sarah ended up finding freelance writing as something she could do from anywhere in the world and focused on personal finance writing. Today, Sarah makes over $100,000 a year working part-time from home, creating content for financial brands and online publications. It's not easy to create in-demand content and get paid for it, but her desires to be independent and to be free to spend her time the way she wants keep her on track. Sarah is also the host of the Beyond the Dollar podcast, where she has deep and honest conversations about how money affects our well-being. Sarah joined me from Jacksonville, Florida, to share her personal finance story.
So my earliest money memory was when my family and I first moved to Canada, and we were looking at Canadian currency, and I remember my mom sitting down with us on the carpet and showing us a loonie, and she said, "Look at this is like gold." And I remember my sister and I just staring at this thing, moving it around, trying to get the reflection off the sun, and we felt like we were like pirates getting pieces of gold. But it was just like we were in awe of the fact that there was this piece of coin that we could use to buy things in this new country. It's like I remember in slow-mo, like my mom took it out of her coin purse,
and
my
your
sister
mom
and I just
revealed this.
Yeah, and my sister and I just kind of like gasped. Like it was we were like 5, so
Awesome.
Can you imagine a 5-year-old just being in awe of a loonie? But yeah.
I love that because at one time that would have been what a gold piece might have looked like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been worth a lot more than whatever the loonies are made of now. Is it some copper, I guess? And,
I don't even know, to be honest.
Right? Nothing obviously too valuable, otherwise it would be worth more than $1, right?
Exactly.
So, or Canadian dollar anyway. So what year is this then? You're 5?
This was in. Oh, now you're gonna like get me to reveal my age, but
oh, okay.
Like,
So
no, it's fine. It's fine.
It
was like it was like 1988, I think.
Okay.
When we first moved there, yeah.
So you're 1983, which is like full like beginning of millennial, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I'm in the older spectrum of a millennial, if you want to get technical about it.
I'm in the ancient millennial spectrum.
Oh, there you go.
1980. Some people decide that it's part of the millennials. Some people say Gen X. It's really in the middle, Xennial, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where I fall in. But you're full millennial. So 1988, you're 5. You moved to Canada from where?
From Hong Kong.
Okay, and so you have like a citizenship or passport or something from Hong Kong?
Yeah, so I think it's called the right to abode. So it's like a permanent residency card. So I don't necessarily have like a passport. I can say I'm a citizen, but I don't think legally that's what I am.
So you come from Hong Kong, you come to Canada, and then eventually just, I guess, what happens naturally as a kid? Do you end up becoming a resident of Canada, or how does that work?
We became citizens, I think it was like the 125th, Canada's 125th anniversary, which was really cool because I think I'm pretty sure I was in grade 6 at the time. And so,
92,
in grade school, Yeah, so in grade school, you always kind of have like these ceremonies or assemblies. There you go. And so it was like the day before we went to Hawaii, and they were like, "Oh, congratulations to Sarah and Olivia," was my sister's name, "for becoming citizens." And then we went up and got a medal, which that's the part I remember, and not remembering getting my citizenship, which I know that's like a, a weird thing. So
because you would have had to go through some kind of government ceremony as well.
Yeah, so I mean, my parents would have had to take the test, the naturalization test, not us, because we were too young, and so yeah, we would have had to like gone to like an office. Gosh, I'm so bad at I don't know what it's called, but it's a place.
Oh yeah,
and then
yeah,
you get your citizenship, and so I don't remember that, but I remember getting a medal for it
at school.
At school.
So they celebrated this thing at school just to welcome you as the group, like in this for the rest of the classmates to help celebrate you as well. That was the idea?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So you're in Canada. The Loonie is awesome, of course, and you're living all of your most of your childhood in Canada. You don't know anything other than being Canadian as a kid, really, right?
Well, we have relatives all over the world, but mainly in Hong Kong, and so we would go for maybe like a couple weeks at a time here and there. I call myself Canadian, but I still spent quite a lot of time in Hong Kong.
Yeah, that's awesome. You kept going back and forth, so you're keeping like what are sort of your roots, right? In Canada, and now of course now you're in the States, and you lived in a couple other countries, so you're like a citizen of the world, basically.
Yeah, essentially.
But I think it is cool that you call yourself Canadian because you did spend your formative years here, and you are a Canadian citizen. And now you have what's your status in the U.S.?
So it's just a green card right now.
Yeah, and how long does that process take? And I'm jumping ahead, but I like doing that.
Gosh, okay, for me it was a little bit long. Okay, it was long and fast. So my husband and I were both living in China, and so I had applied for a green card there instead of going through Canada. It just was a little bit easier.
Interesting.
It was easier in the sense because we're both living there. We had work permits, and so we could just, instead of flying back to Canada, I could just do it in the US. And so what ended up happening was we submitted all our paperwork. They claimed they sent a letter to us. We never got it. Anyways, we were like, I was getting really nervous. But anyways, as soon as they found out that I never got this letter, they sort of, as soon as we handed in the paperwork that was needed, I got an appointment fairly quickly, and so we just had to make sure we got our paperwork and all of that. And so I think it took, I'd say like a year, just because of the little bit of mix-up that was involved. But
really,
luckily for me, I'm a Canadian citizen. It's, we were just talking about privilege for the podcast. It's a little bit easier for a Canadian to get U.S. permanent residency.
Yes.
So because I'm Canadian, my husband's a naturalized citizen, it was a little bit easier. I didn't have to have as much paperwork. So for example, if you were living in China, you had to have all your documents translated into English. That costs quite a bit of money.
Of course.
I think for some, I could be totally wrong, so please do not quote me on this, is that if you have bank statements and such, you have to get the currency converted to US dollars if it wasn't in local currency or US currency.
Officially, from the bank has to do it? Or
yeah, so you have to, or the bank, or you have to get one of the notaries in China. You need to get a notary or a translator that the consulate approves of.
It's something that certifies them as not forged documents, right?
Right, exactly. So we ended up having to translate a few documents, but it wasn't nearly, I think, as much as some people would have. So we were lucky in that sense that it took a little bit, I'm going to put this in air quotes, faster than what other people would have had to go through.
Now, the green card, I don't know how long that lasts, but is there a timeline as to when you can then apply to be a resident or citizen or however that the next step is?
So my green card lasts for 10 years.
10 years,
and
okay.
Typically, again, it depends on your situation. I think typically is like, if you've been in the country for 3 years, and it depends on your spouse's status as well, you can actually start to apply for citizenship. I think other than that, it's like 5 years. So yeah, I mean, if you decide you want to become one at all, if not, you can just technically renew your green card if you qualify.
Okay, so you might just do that. Okay, that's a little jump into the future. Now we're gonna just because I was curious about, not a lot of people. I mean, I know some, but not a lot of people have citizenship or residency or work permits in multiple countries. So it's I I always feel like yours is a very unique situation and interesting, to navigate all of this.
Yeah, it's funny because I guess I get to talk to people and they just ask, oh, where you're from or where you've lived. And so I'll start mentioning something and I don't realize I'm kind of teasing out the rest of my story. And they're like, wait, you lived where? Wait, you were here? And I was like, yeah. And so I would just, again, continue the conversation. And I didn't realize, I guess in hindsight I should have, but I didn't realize how many places I've lived or how, like, all the things that I've done before I was 30. In terms of like where I've traveled, how I've worked and all of the things. And so it's been fun reliving it through podcasts like this one or, with other people when I speak with them. Yeah,
and so we're gonna try to touch on all of them now because there are lots, and I tend to go on tangents like we just did. So hopefully we'll get to all of them, but we'll do our best. So let's go back to you then. You're a kid. You find out money exists. Now, does that make you want money? How are you as a kid? Do you want to make money? Are you like the lemonade stand kid, or are you like not knowing or caring about money?
So I was a little bit of a rebel.
Okay.
My entire family, I know, can you tell? My entire family was in the accounting business.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or worked in banks. So like my cousins now are all like, vice presidents of like major banks in Hong Kong, things like that. My mom was an accountant.
Big banking family, yeah.
Yeah, my mom was an accountant. She did bookkeeping for my dad's business.
Numbers. Everyone's
right.
numbers.
Everyone's numbers. I mean, I knew QuickBooks, like the old school QuickBooks at a young age.
Old school.
Like I knew all the terms. Like I knew my way around spreadsheet, all before the age of 12.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, like, this is so boring. Like, I do not care about this stuff. Like, why are people geeking out over spreadsheets?
Absolutely.
I say so ironically now that I'm obsessed with them. But it was one of those where I'm like, who cares? Like, all I want to do is just make enough money to have fun.
Yeah.
Because I was, like, kind of like the kid that wanted to go to art school and make paintings and sell it for millions of dollars or travel around the world.
So that's young Sarah was the rebel against these orderly spreadsheet people, and you just wanted to do something different. And so were you able to make moves to do that early?
Yeah. So I remember it was so funny. We would have clubs after school. I think lunchtime we had clubs in our elementary school, and I would like almost purposely pick ones that my friends didn't because I wanted to like be the only one and I could recount all the awesome things that happened during club times.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. Again, a rebel, right? I also picked like art classes. For some reason, I knew at a very young age that's what I enjoyed. And so I wanted to do like drawing classes and all of those things. That was a big thing. And I remember my mom bought me a film camera when I was younger because she saw that I had an interest in photography.
Yeah.
And so I was really into that. And I knew it was really funny too, because considering all my parents and all of my relatives were into the banking and accounting, all of that, they were very into stability.
Yes.
And so they always impressed upon me to have like a nice stable career, to do all the things that would get me a good job. And so that was always in the back of my mind. And so I knew that the art world isn't exactly as stable as some other
not really.
careers. Just being an artist wasn't as stable. And so I was like, oh, what if I became an art teacher? Like I could get a permanent contract teaching in Ontario and I could still have my love of art and have that nice stable career. And so I knew as a young kid, this is looking back so weird. Like I remember being 6 and 7. I'm like, I'm going to be a teacher when I grow up.
That's the thing that combines the two things. You're able to have the best of both worlds in that case.
And I knew I loved traveling. And I also remember meeting exchange teachers or teachers who would get jobs on cruise ships that they would do in the summer. And so I was like, and I was like, oh, that is perfect. So I can do art, I can have a stable job, and I can travel because I can take this job anywhere in the world. So when I was a young kid, that was like my career goal.
Wasn't there a whole show about kids on a cruise ship going to high school? Breaker High.
Yes. Okay, I did watch that.
Did you watch it?
I did.
Probably not inspirational or anything, but that's just what it reminded me of. So so are you're making moves then to get there? Like you just don't care about money at this point? Is that like, is money having any impact on you?
No, I mean, I remember being pretty frugal as a kid. Like, it was not because I didn't like spending money. It was more like, well, why am I buying these Air Jordans when this pair of like other high tops look just as fine? I can use this money for something else. So it was more like, this is not a value to me, and it's like way too expensive for what I would be willing to pay for. I'm not going to buy it.
It's like you were like a mindful spender from early age.
Yeah, so I remember that. I remember like my father had friends who sold really cheap toys from China. Like they would bring it in and they would sell it to my dad like at cost, and they had like electric scooters and things like that, and I would just refuse them, and I'm like, I don't need those things. Why would I want to buy them? So that definitely was frugal. But in other ways I would like overspend.
Okay.
When I was in high school, I was really like into trying to impress people with like being the cool person,
Being
and
a
so
little different.
so I would buy like vinyl records. I had a huge like Pez dispenser collection, like hundreds and hundreds of it. Like I was nicknamed Pez Girl at one point. Like that's how many I had. And so I remember, so it was funny because I'm like, I would use money to impress people because I had pretty low self-esteem, I think, by the time high school came. So I was using money to like make myself feel more worthy as a person. But then I was also like, well, I don't care about this. I'm not going to buy it. So there was like those two things.
Real dichotomy there.
Yeah. And it was like, oh, I don't care about money. I refuse to be in the financial world, but then I want money to help me travel the world. I'm going to purposely pick a career. So it was like really like these weird conflicts.
Well, and that's a struggle for a lot of creative people, right? Is sort of rejecting money as an evil, or whatever the negative term is, but then realizing I need it for something.
Yeah, and I think what I've learned really looking back is that all the while I was using money as a tool for something, whether it was positive or negative. So like it was positive in the way that, oh great, I was using money to fuel a career and hobbies that I love, right? To teach, to travel around the world and all of those. That was great. However, it was negative because it was used to mask my feelings of unworthiness, all of that. And so I was still using money towards whatever I wanted to feel, whether that was positive or negative.
Yeah, like the money, well, at least enabled your coping mechanism, whatever that would have been at the time. Which I guess, yeah. So spending, like, but spending on like making yourself more creative. That's what it seems to be, Pez dispensers and all that kind of thing. It
started out like I was really interested in it. I thought, oh, these are really cool Pez dispensers. But then it became like, it's my thing, and people knew me as it's my thing. And so got me like attention, which was something that I didn't realize I was craving.
Ah, okay. So you were like, I like this attention, and now I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get more of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I mean, I could see how that can lead people down, spending hole, or, people like it when I buy them things, so I'm just going to buy everybody things, like that kind of example.
And I did buy things for friends.
Yeah.
Many people were appreciative. I think I did buy other things to make friends, or I would buy myself things to have hobbies where I thought people would be interested in, and so I'd make friends that way. So yeah, all of those.
Well, we're all learning how to socialize at this time of our lives, right? We're just trying to figure out what it is that we like and what it is that makes us happy. And it sounds like a lot of people go through this in different permutations, I think. Yeah,
I mean, I think I remember when I ended up selling all of my Pez dispensers and my vinyl records, and I just gave myself such a hard time. Like, oh my gosh, like how much did you spend on this? I think a lot of people go through that process sometimes when they get rid of their things. And so I had to really say, like, that really was just a decision that I thought would make me happy at the time. Like, that is something I tell myself a lot. It's like, I just thought that this was going to help. And so you can't really shame a previous part of yourself when that person may not have known better.
That's right. You're learning. Yeah. We're always growing, and regret is in the addiction world where I come from, is a really terrible thing, right? You can't really have regret, or you're just going to be miserable about all the things that you've done. I like that way of framing it, that you were just learning, and so yeah, maybe you wouldn't do the same thing today, but that's you're a different person now. Yeah, I like that a lot. So where did the money come from to buy all this stuff? Where did you just start working somewhere?
I saved up like birthday money. In the Asian culture, we have something called Chinese New Year or Lunar New Year, depending on where you're from. And so you would get money from your relatives.
Red pockets.
Yes, red pockets, exactly. So I hoarded that stuff.
Okay.
I hoarded it. We were like, okay, now, like I have a couple $100. I'm gonna go spend it on
Gotcha.
whatever. Yeah.
So no work, or did you start work at all in high school?
I started working when I was 18. My parents didn't want work to interfere with my studies, and so
I see.
I did work. I would work in the summer, starting when I was 16, but then I would stop it when I started school again.
What would you do in the summers?
I worked at a summer camp, and then I worked at the Gap, which was apparently a very coveted job back then because you can get discounts on Gap. And I was like, I don't care. Like, I'm just here to work. But I guess my friends thought it was pretty cool.
I mean, if they sold Pez dispensers, maybe that would have been lucrative for you.
I think I would not have left with a paycheck if I worked at a place with Pez dispensers.
Do you have photos of this collection like from then? Because I'm interested in to like see the extent of it.
You know what? I'm gonna have to take it up because I sold them on Etsy, so I did have to take photos for the listings.
Okay.
If I have any, I'll send you some.
I just it'd be curious to see some like really interesting ones. I'm sure you came across some. Do you have like a one in mind?
Yeah, so there's one. It's actually Wile E. Coyote. It's a little plastic kind of statue, I guess you'd say. So it's a mountain, and then Wile E. Coyote has a shovel. And so when you press the button, he moves, and then he goes into the little, like, there's a little hole in the mountain, and then out comes a Pez dispenser. So he's like shoveling a Pez dispenser.
Okay, so like not your regular size Pez dispenser, but
no, this is like a special one. And then I had another one I remember now too. It's a belt clip, so it's like a round.
Oh,
it's
awesome.
I'd say about half the size of a personal pan pizza. If anybody knows what that is.
Yeah.
So it was a belt clip.
I do, unfortunately.
Yeah. So it's a belt clip. It's clear on the front, and it says Pez across it, and then you could see the individual candies. And so you press a button, and then the Pez goes around in a circle, and then it eventually dispenses one out. So if you were like really hankering for a Pez, you just got this like clip-on thing for your side of your pants or whatever, and just eat Pez.
I'm gonna keep talking about Pez for a little longer for some reason. I don't know why, but did you enjoy the taste of Pez? Because I've always just been on the fence about Pez.
You know what? I'm gonna be honest. I initially liked it, but I don't.
Not
I just
now,
like the
right?
dispensers, yeah.
Yeah. It became more about the dispensers, because to me the candy is whatever. It's actually kind of generic. It was about the dispensers instead. That's the last question I had about Pez. So let's go back. So you're earning money. You're saving it to buy these things that we just talked about. Do you have plans to go to teachers college? Then was that like just your plan forever?
I remember I was like, okay, I'm going to go to teacher's college and I'm going to pay my way through school. So I was, again, really independent in that sense where I'm like, I don't need to rely on anybody. I'll do it myself. And it was also like one of those, just in case my parents didn't approve and they didn't want to help me out, I could do it myself. And so
that's so important, right? Autonomy is I was just talking about that with Erin Lowry, Broken Millennial, because she comes from privilege, and we're like, why don't your parents just give you money? And like autonomy, right? That's like it's so important. We don't even think about that, right?
Yeah, and that's a big value of mine too. And so I saved, so the summer before university, I saved up all of that for school, and then I got a loan. I think it's OSAP. Yep. For tuition, I think like for half of the tuition of the first year, and then I got a job at a restaurant, worked my tail off for tips and all of that, and so I paid my way through school that way. And
just for everyone's comparison, this was in Ontario, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And tuition in Ontario in the early 2000s? When was this?
Yeah, so it was, I would say, hold on, yeah, probably early 2000s. So it's like ridiculously cheap back then. I don't know how much it costs now, but I think I paid like $7,000 Canadian. It was cheap,
right?
It was cheap.
And how long was Teachers College?
The program that I took was concurrent with my bachelor's degree.
Okay, yeah. Great.
So I did a major in English, minor in visual arts. So because of that, it stretched it to a 5-year.
Oh yeah, was this where at school?
This was at York University.
Yeah, okay, you went to York. Nice. So and at the end you have a Bachelor of Education. Is that how it works?
Yes.
Okay, and you can teach. They teach you how to teach during this program, and you come out and you can go apply for jobs, or is it more complicated than that?
Yeah, Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much how it works.
So what did you? You're paying for it, but you have loans. How much debt do you have then coming out of school?
I think I had about like 6,000 ish. I'm trying to remember.
Okay.
Yeah, about that
That's
much.
pretty good. Yeah, considering.
Because again, I was like really just
yeah.
adamant about like not getting into debt. Which when we get later in the story, you'd be like, what? Anyways, so then I remember graduating, and I was like, okay. What I can do is get a job in Ontario, because what they do, I think I don't know what the technical term is, called 2/3. So teachers, I think you know what I mean. And so for non-teachers, basically what you do is once you get a permanent teaching contract, you can teach for 2 years and then take a year off without risk of losing your contract. And so in some cases, what you can do is you can spread out your paycheck over 3 years, but you're getting paid for 2. Or you can get paid for 2 years and then you don't. And so I had a friend that did that. She does that every once in a while, where she'll work for 2 years and take a year off. And I was like, oh, I can do that. I can work for 2 years. I can save up, and then I can travel for a whole year and then rinse and repeat.
I love that.
But that didn't happen.
Okay.
It wasn't very easy to get teaching jobs in Ontario when I graduated. This was about 2006-ish.
Yep.
And then I had an opportunity to go to Australia. And I thought, hey, you know what? Like, why not? So I bought a one-way. Yeah, I thought I got a one-way ticket, and then I went to Australia.
Other than going back to Hong Kong, had you traveled much before that?
And we went to Hawaii when I was 12.
Yeah, Hawaii, yeah, okay.
We went to Europe a few times, and then I went to Australia for 3 weeks during one summer when I was in university.
So you had already been. Mm-hmm. It sounds like your parents are making some money.
All the while, I don't know how much they make. I still don't know how much they make. It's something that was never discussed. It's just full transparency. I don't know. Like
Sure.
I think my dad had a 9-to-5, and then he had his own business. And then my mom, again, like I said, she did some bookkeeping on the side, and she did pretty well in her accounting career.
Okay.
And so I remember there was air miles like way back when, like this was like when it first came out, and when they were much more generous with like shelling out stuff. And so my mom realized she had enough air miles for free flights to Europe. But we did end up, I remember we still ended up spending, or not we, my parents spent it quite a bit. I don't remember the exact numbers, but because of hotels and all of those things, they did end up spending more. Flights to Hong Kong aren't cheap. They're probably cheaper now than they were back then, because there's just more flights now. And so I don't know if they went into debt for it. I don't know if they paid it all in cash. I'm going to assume that they did, just because my mom's pretty... good with numbers. They're good with
money. Yeah, I only bring it up. It's just good to know where you're coming from, right? Like to be, being able to travel at all when you're a kid is a privilege, right?
Oh yeah, I'm very lucky in that sense. Like I don't know many people that have traveled that much. When I was younger, I would say I felt like I was in a little bit of a bubble. I didn't realize that until much later, because many of my other friends were also from parts of Asia, and so they would fly back every summer, and so I thought it was like a normal thing.
Well, it's just like it's such a good thing to do so young, so that when an opportunity like this comes up for you to move away, you're well traveled, you don't have fear.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things too where I've always wanted to be very independent.
Yes.
So I mean, I remember like going to Australia, didn't have a place to live. Like I know that'd be scary for a lot of people, and it was scary for me too, but I was like, I'll figure this out. Like I have no idea, but I trusted that like I'm going to be in a country that speaks primarily English, and they're probably going to have like hotels or hostels. Like I'll figure, like, again, money was not in the back of my mind. Like I think if I think about it now, like I would have not gone, because then I'd be like, oh, but how am I going to afford this? I don't remember having much money in the bank, which again, later on I ended up having to rely on credit cards, and I got into debt because of that.
Okay.
But not thinking about those, just thinking about like, okay, I'll figure this out. I think even if you're not well traveled, or even if you haven't done certain experiences and you want to, just keep that like in mind, where you're like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. Like I can trust in my skills and to do it.
Well, it's interesting, in a way, ignorance is bliss in some situations. Right?
It's so true.
So in a way, it enabled you to go, which, like you said, you may not have gone if you did crunched all the numbers. But the consequence of ignorance is often debt, and that's where you ended up. So you did go to Australia. How long were you there?
I was there for almost a year. So I went with the promise of a teaching contract. And then when I got there, the school actually ended up hiring somebody else based on the fact that I don't know what the rules are. It could be an excuse. I have no idea. But they ended up hiring an Australian before me because I'm not Australian. And so
because of the rules. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think there's rules around that, I'm sure. And so I was like, oh, well, I have no job and I got my ticket. Of course, I probably should be freaking out at this point. And I remember I was in shock, and I remember walking out of a recruitment agency because that was the company that brought me here. And the recruiter at the time was Canadian. He was from Stony Creek, which is hilarious. Yeah, it's hilarious. Right? I know.
It's like 10-minute drive from here.
Yeah. So he calls me up as I'm walking back to the hospital. He's like, hey, listen, we actually have an opening for an administrative assistant at the office. Like, would you be interested until we figure out, like, getting you another teaching gig? And I said, sure. And so I did. So even before I had like a chance to think about like, oh my God, what am I going to do for money? Like this phone call pops up. And so I was like, okay, cool. And I loved working for them. I ended up I think doing some substitute teaching here and there in Australia, but I never fully taught.
Okay.
But it was fun. It was great. Like they loved me. They opened a new office across the country. And so they flew me there to train someone. It was an amazing time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you certainly made the most of a bad situation. Yeah. Everybody else might have just got on a plane and gone back. Why didn't you were determined to stay and make it work?
I didn't have enough time to really think about like if I wanted to fly back. Because it was like, I remember getting that call. And I was like, fine, I'll take the job. Like, it was just one of those things where I'm like, I didn't even think about it. I'm like, okay, I'll take a job. Like, I'll figure it out as I go. Like, I think if the job was terrible or like something else came up, I would be like, no, now I can fly back. Another thing was that my ex-boyfriend decided to come along as well. And so I was like, oh, well, I can't really leave because he's going to come in a few weeks. Like, I got to get everything ready. And so that was the other thing, too, that prompted me to stay.
Yeah, an interesting twist there kind of forced you to stay, at least for a little bit, and then the opportunity came up. It's interesting how all these things sort of just happen, right? If you're, I guess maybe you're open, you left yourself open to, like, or you told the world that you were in a situation, and then someone was able to find something for you.
Yeah, it's just so funny, the string of incidents that actually lead me to where I am now. It's almost like serendipitous. Like, oh yeah, I flew, I didn't get the job, but now I got another one and I love it. And okay, I got into debt, but you know what, guess what? Like, we'll talk about this, but we're just like, but guess what? I flew back to Canada and I got a job like within a few weeks, and now I flew to South Korea, and like, hey, I don't know what I want to do, but here's a job offer to China, and I flew to China. It's like, hey, I met this guy who's going to become my husband. Like, that's pretty cool. Like, and so it's just, anyways, it's just really funny how things work.
I hear what you're saying, and yeah, we're going to try to get to those specifics in a sec, but I just feel like you're open to possibilities. If you weren't, then probably you would have said a lot of no's, right?
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I say this very casually, like, oh yeah, this stuff happened. But yeah, you're right. I could have said no. Like, I remember when I was in South Korea debating what my next move was, because I was like, I don't want to live in South Korea. Like, I love the people, but it was one of those, I just knew in my gut that it was time to move on.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, I don't know what I should do. Should I go to like graduate school, or should I try to make a go back in Canada, get a teaching job? And then part of me was like, oh, maybe I'll just apply to some other jobs around the world and figure it out. And so when this job offer for China came, I could have said no to that because it was a new school. It was a new principal. There really wasn't anything. Oh, this was also 2008, so the internet wasn't. I mean, it was great, but isn't as like thorough as it is now. And so I could have said no because I didn't know much about the school. I didn't know much about the principal. Yeah, because again, it was brand new, and so I could have been like, oh, this doesn't feel safe. Like, I might as well go back home. And so you're right. Like, I think in life, not just in money, but in life, like, we're presented with these opportunities all the time.
All the time, yeah. And
so it's really up to us to say yes or no. And again, that's probably a muscle that you need to practice as well. Is I think looking back when I would say yes or no to stuff, I remember when I would say no, sometimes I regretted it because I made that decision out of fear. But then I knew my gut that I should have probably said yes to it. I mean, hindsight again is 2020, but yeah, be open to what it is. I mean, start saying yes to little things. It doesn't have to be like, hey, let's buy a one-way ticket to Australia and figure this stuff out. Like, that's probably pretty scary for a lot of people, and I totally get it. But there's things you can say yes to. Like, maybe there's a meetup across town, and like there's some cool people you want to meet, like say yes to that.
Yeah.
You know, or I don't know, like maybe you're really interested in switching careers, so maybe say yes to that part-time gig for now.
Yeah, and there's no harm in trying things, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can decide to pivot whenever you want.
Yeah, and I've pivoted quite a few times.
Okay, so on that note, let's try to get from Australia to Jacksonville like in 10 minutes.
Okay, I can make it quick.
Okay, I know it's tough because I'd love to drill down on everything. I used up all my time on Pez. I don't have any regrets though. No no regrets. And you can come on the show again, and we'll talk about other things. So you went back to Canada after Australia. You're in debt because you weren't making enough money, and you had to pay for plane tickets and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. So, and I also ended up paying for quite a bit of my ex's stuff as well. So I offered to pay for I offered to pay for like groceries whenever I did fly across the country to train in this new office. I offered to pay for that. I paid for a couple trips here and there. So anyway, got into debt. Didn't even realize I was in debt because I was like, I refused to look at my credit card bill.
You're not even looking. Okay, so this is where Sarah's at this point. Not even
and I
looking
knew
at credit cards.
I knew my bank statements. I mean, not bank statements. My bank account balance wasn't great. It was like almost at zero most times, and I was like, okay, cool, whatever. And so after my contract was done, I was like, I'm gonna go home. I should probably just get a job and buy a house, and I'm probably gonna get engaged and all of those adulting things, right?
The checklist,
yeah, the checklist. And so I flew back. Ex broke up with me via MSN Messenger.
Stayed in Australia? No.
Yeah, he was in Australia. He broke up with me through MSN Messenger, and so if you know what that is, like again, I'm pretty ancient.
That's
in
low
internet years. Yeah, and so I was like, oh, and so I remember checking. I was sitting in my bedroom, in my parents' house, and I was looking at the credit card statements, and I was like, oh my god, like I have $9,000 in debt. Like it was,
wow, okay.
And I was like, oh, okay. So I remember like, how did I get to this? Like, I know how to budget. I know all of the logical things in the spreadsheets, but like how did I end up in this? And it was just one of those where I was in shock, and I went downstairs and I was like, Mom, can I stay with you for a little bit? She didn't even, like, no questions asked. Like, she just said, okay, sure, I'll give you a few weeks.
She understood. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so she's like, sure, I'll give you a few weeks and figure things out. And again, went back upstairs, and I was just like, oh, like, what do I do? And so I was like, okay, well, like, what do I need right now? And the answer was like, I just need something to pay this off, because I couldn't get a teaching job at the time. Again, like with unions, is a little bit more difficult to get in as a newbie. Number two, it was like the wrong time of the year to really apply for anything permanent or part-time or anything like that. I think it was like the end of June or July when I got back. And so anyway, so I was like, okay, no job prospects for teaching. Let me just walk to the mall where I worked in college and got my waitressing job back. And I worked at the Gap for a little bit, and I was like, okay, cool, I'll just do this and then I'll figure it out. And then my friend in South Korea taught there, and I was just kind of casually mentioning, like, I'd love to go overseas again. And she said, well, the school's hiring, are you interested? So I thought, okay, cool. So sent a resume, and then went through the interview process via Skype, and then they said, when can you come? And so a month later, I flew to South Korea and worked and lived there for a year.
Okay, 1 year.
Yes. And so just to backtrack a little, I remember mentioning, like, okay, that year was up. My gut was telling me I should probably go, but I didn't want to leave, but I didn't know what my prospects were. Very randomly applied to this school in in South Korea, but then the principal was moving to China. And so the school, again, was brand new.
So the new one, yeah.
I didn't know anything about the principal or anything, but I said yes to it. When I signed the contract, it was like, oh, for 2 years. And I thought, okay. I thought it was for 1 year, because to me, that's all I knew was 1 year contracts. And I thought, okay, well, you know what? If it really sucks, I'll just leave.
Just break the contract. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I'll just break the contract if it's really that bad. And so, I flew to China right after my contract ended in South Korea, and I lived there for about 8 years.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. 8 years. Okay. Mm-hmm. Just a quick step back. So you're able to pay off all your debt with the South Korea money?
Yes. I paid the debt off in 9 months, I'd say. So just as a quick primer for teachers, it's really beneficial to go overseas because you get, in most cases, you get free housing.
Yeah.
in some cases transportation, but I didn't get that. But the free and standard living is like so low compared to North America. So essentially 90% of my income was mine.
Wow.
Like I could do whatever I wanted with it. And so I paid off my debt.
What's your salary at that
Back
time?
then, I think it was like 30,000.
Here would be like half of that, and then in costs and then taxes, but you don't have to worry about any of that in
No,
South
and
Korea.
then you also got like pension, and so when you leave, you get that too.
You get it paid out
Yeah,
to you.
and
Wow.
so it was great. Yeah.
Okay, so you're banking money, and so now you paid off your debt, and you have some savings.
Yeah,
before you
paid
go
off my
to
debt,
China.
had some savings. Right, when I went to China, and then again, like I said, that's where I met my husband because we worked together. We got married in Hong Kong, which I don't know what. I just think that's very funny, but we got married in Hong Kong. And then
I was wondering if it was coming back. That's why I asked at the beginning.
So we got married in Hong Kong because my relatives were there, and it was easier to get married there instead of mainland China.
Sure, your relatives there, yeah.
Right. And so we got married in 2010, and then we were kind of like, oh, well, what should we do? Should we go back to the U.S.? We ended up staying a little bit more. Yeah, because I was like 2 years into China. So then...
And you're teaching for 8 years.
So yeah, that plus, the other years that I was in Korea and a little bit in Australia.
Yeah, but 8 years in China.
8 years in China, yes.
Are you starting to do any side hustle type things at this point yet?
Yeah, so in about, I think 2012, that's when I started freelance writing as a side hustle because I was bored. Like I seriously was just bored.
So China was boring.
Yeah. Not China was boring. It was just like I was bored one day and I was like, what can I do?
Oh, you gotcha.
And so I fell down this rabbit hole of like Google searches like one does and stumbled across freelance writing. And I thought, oh, that'd be fun to get paid. And so I pitched a couple of places and I think I got paid like $50 for my first article. And I loved it. And so I did that just really very casually. And then it wasn't until I gave birth in 2015 that I realized, what, maybe I could make a go of this, especially since my husband and I were considering moving to the US because that's where he's from.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, maybe I can really make a go at this because at that point, if I were to move to the US, I'd have to get, social security number, all the documentation. And I didn't know if my Canadian teaching license would work in the US.
Okay, so you're trying to make alternate plans now.
Yeah.
Because you have one child now. I mean, you did then. Do you have more than one child now? I forget.
Just one.
Yeah. So you still have that. You still have that child.
Yes.
And born in China. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's also very interesting too, right? You're born in Hong Kong, moved to Canada, moved to China, have a child there, and now living in the States.
Yeah.
Just wrap your head around that, right?
I know, and it's so funny because whenever we tell people how my husband and I met, they're like, you moved halfway across the world to meet someone that lived a 6-hour drive away from you. And I said, exactly.
I know. Yeah, because where is he from originally?
He's from Pittsburgh. So
yeah.
It's like 6-hour drive. Yeah, not that bad.
I think I drove through there on the way down to Orlando last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, or just past Pittsburgh, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, you are just randomly stumbling onto freelance writing, which is just so interesting. It's not like you had been writing books or novels or writing online. Were you blogging at all?
I think I started a blog because people said you should if you're going to be a freelance writer. Again, the should thing. And so I did. I just started. It was like a very. It felt like one of those live journal type blogs. Again, I'm making myself feel really old. Like a Tumblr blog. Like where you just kind of write random things. And so I kind of gave up on that pretty fast. And I didn't start anything until 2016, basically when I moved to the US. But yeah, I was just doing freelance writing. At that point I was doing more educational writing, so more like
writing about what you know, right?
Yeah, like higher ed stuff, like for clients, higher ed stuff, textbooks and things like that. Then I transitioned to personal finance writing when a client very randomly asked me to write about how you freelance overseas. And so other people got wind of that article and then asked me to write more personal finance type stuff. And I realized, hey, that's like, where's more of the money's at, so let me do that. And so
that's how you got into the personal finance space,
which was funny because no one really, I think that people were surprised to hear that I was Canadian. I don't know what gave them the impression I wasn't, right? But I would write a lot about US finance, and it was it was such a learning curve at the beginning because I didn't know anything about it, right?
Well, yeah.
But it was great because it prepped me for when we moved to the US. And again, it was one of those where this could be like a little backup thing while I figure out the teaching stuff. So when we moved to the US, I was like, told my husband, like, I'm going to give this a go for 6 months. If it crashes and burns, I will then be more serious about looking for a job. And I haven't had a job since.
How did you meet all the people that you ended up working for? Conferences?
A lot of them were through email. I remember waking up in the middle of the night in China because it was, daytime in the US, and I would just call and see if they needed work. And so it was a lot of like waking up in the middle of the night at one point to do that. When we moved to the US, it was the same thing. It was just calling. At that point, I was getting more referrals from fellow freelance writers, from clients or current clients that really liked me and just gave me more stuff. But it's really unsexy. Like, don't let anybody tell you otherwise. It's like, that's really unsexy stuff where it's like you're just consistently doing outreach all the time. It does get easier. Like, now that I've been doing it for about 7 years, it's easier, but I still have to email, like a lot less than I used to, but I still sometimes have to reach out to new clients or existing clients and ask for more work.
Yeah, asking for work. We're not really trained to do that, are we? We're trained to get a job and do the thing and sit 9 to 5. And then we don't ever use the muscle of asking. Yeah,
it's so funny. I was actually doing a podcast interview earlier, and we were talking about how negotiation is part of your everyday life. You just have to like really think of it that way, or asking for things is part of that. And so it could be like you're ordering, I don't know, extra French fries at McDonald's, like that. You're asking something, right? But why does it feel different than asking for more work? Or maybe you're negotiating. Yeah, maybe you're negotiating with your husband, like where you want to go for dinner or vacation. Like that's negotiating, but for some reason it feels different when you're doing that with your boss. I mean, yes, there's clear reasons why, but you're doing it all the time. And I think when, like, going back to the idea of opportunities and how I spot them, it's like we look for opportunities all the time. It just really depends on what we want or what we're looking for.
And the motivation for you to do this was just that you knew you couldn't keep making money the way you were making money if you moved back, right? Is that the primary reason why? That was the
initial goal, and I really wanted to make sure that I had a flexible schedule for my son. Again, when we moved to the US, we didn't know where yet. At this point, it was like, oh, well, my husband, it's easier for him to get a teaching job because he already has a US teaching license and all of that. And so it was one of those things where like, we'll be adventurous and figure out where in the US we're going to go. And so if it was like far away from family, then the childcare duties would fall on us to figure out like where,
of course.
To figure out like basically like who, who's going to like babysit, or we'd want to put him in daycare and all those things. And so I thought, well, if my husband's role right now is just to get us into the US and get a job, then okay, fine. The primary care is probably going to fall on me, which is fine. And so if that's the case, and I'm already kind of figuring out my career prospects, I might as well be the one with the flexible schedule so that I can be the one to figure out childcare and all of the other things, while my husband has to figure out paperwork for his teaching job.
Yeah. I'm kind of in the reverse situation right now. My wife is going back to med school. And I'm the one who has the flexible schedule with our 6.5-month-old baby. It's a totally different situation. You can just pick up and go teach in another country at this point, right?
Gosh, I'm sure with a young child, it's like really difficult. On top of like working, right? So I'm like here freelancing at home.
It's a full-time job on a full-time job.
Yeah, so it's freelancing at home. We didn't know anybody in the town we lived in initially. So we were pretty isolated. And I was watching this kid, and he was teething at the time, which, as most parents know, or all parents know, it's like a tough stage. Like, I mean, all stages were tough, but that one was particularly
I'm
rough
living it,
on
right?
me.
Living it now. He's got 2 teeth right on the bottom.
Oh. So, I was going through that, and I think, like, we wanted to start potty training early. Anyways, it was all those things, and it was just like, oh, my gosh, when I went through the thick of it, but I'm still very thankful that I transitioned, because the more I did it, the more I realized like how much I enjoy it, how much I enjoy really having more control over my schedule and more control over working with like amazing clients, which I have. And it gives me time to work on more creative things because I have a podcast, so I do that.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention the podcast. But,
it you know, and I guess the bonus on top of it is like the earnings potential. So again, you know, back when I was a kid, I'm like, I don't care about money, but now I do, in the sense is that it gives me more options. Like we have a really healthy emergency fund. Like we have a year's worth stashed away. Like we just bought a house a couple months ago and our pool exploded. I will show you a picture both sometime. Like it literally, like it's an above ground pool and literally exploded. Like it was.
Oh, and wow.
And one of the features we liked about the house was the pool. But anyways, that's besides the point. So we moved in the house, the pool exploded. Our car also broke down and we needed a new transmission. So we ended up buying a new car anyway. So like it was like, okay, closing costs, new car, new pool. We had to fix part of the fence because of the explosion. And I'm just like, okay, like money's important and not important at the same time. Like it's important because it took that stress off of me, knowing that I had money there to like get a car or like to fix things in case my homeowner's insurance wouldn't pay for it, you know. And it gave me the opportunity to be like, I can take time off work because now I can pick up more work later on if I really wanted to make up for lost time and all those things. And so my relationship with money is in some ways the same, but more refined, if it makes sense. Like I'm still very mindful of my purchases, but I'm much more grateful for it and what it can help me do and how it can help my family and even myself.
And money as a tool, as a enabler for freedom, so that you don't have to worry so much, right, about anything. Like everything's taken care of. Now, so the podcast Beyond the Dollar, I mean, you talked about people's relationships with money all the time.
The idea behind the podcast is really looking at life first and then how does money play into it, because I think there's some really amazing podcasts, including yours, right? But there's other ones that talk very nitty gritty into the tactics and budget, which again, great, because that's very much needed. But I think what's really missing is that, like, why do we need that budget? Like, okay, like you want to buy a house. What's the first thing you really think of? Is it really about the mortgage, or is it about what kind of home you want, or which location, right? It's that stuff before the money. So that's really what I want to focus on is that. Yeah,
and you had a co-host and then he moved on. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, so he had some life stuff. So
as we all do, again.
As we all do. And so he had some life stuff, and he was very upfront, honest about it. And so he wanted me to continue the mission of Beyond the Dollar. And so we're still friends. We're just not co-hosts anymore.
Yeah, what happened? I mean, Jay Money did the same thing with Paula Pant.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes this is the thing that we stay with, but you know, as you've had throughout your whole life so far, there are seasons for a whole bunch of different things, right? And sure, teaching was the theme for a while, but it was in different places, and you were always open to opportunities. And then the writing thing, and just to find this community, as you said, great clients.
At the end of the day, if you just keep your mind open, it may not be exactly what you envisioned. And so something I tell people is like, okay, chase that feeling that you want that comes as a result of what you want to achieve. And so the specifics of what you're going to achieve are maybe different, but what you're going to end up getting is probably even like better than what you even imagined. Because like I remember thinking like when I left Canada, I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to come back and live here. Just because, not that I hate it, right?
No,
but it was just one of those, I'm like, I knew that. I just wanted to travel. I wanted adventure. I wanted to feel like I had the opportunity for adventure, and I do now. It just, I bought a house. I'm not traveling as much, but every day is an adventure. Like I get to talk with you on the podcast. I'm going to write a few client articles afterwards. Like tomorrow I'm taking the day off, taking my son to the zoo. Like, so because of that flexibility, I can make every day feel like an adventure, right? So it's like, I get that feeling, but the specifics of it aren't going to be like, I'm going to go to Morocco tomorrow. Like that's not, you know.
And you can get that feeling in many different ways. So you're just saying we need to put it out there into the universe? Is that it?
And if it is something specific you want, great. Like, okay, like this is what I want. And then when you do that, I mean, like if you're not into the woo, that's totally fine. There's that whole idea of confirmation bias where you're gonna look for evidence of things that you want or you are looking for.
Sure.
So if you want a teaching job overseas and you just start talking about it and thinking about it, those opportunities will seem like they magically appear because you're looking for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the podcast has definitely been a great source of that for me. Just like having all of this out there, and probably the same for you with your writing and podcasting. Just, the more you talk about things, the more they start to come your way, and the more you refine what it is you were looking for too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so Beyond the Dollar, that's just go on podcast places and find that wherever you find this podcast or any other podcast. You can find Beyond the Dollar with Sarah Li Cain. And where else can people find you or read? All over the place. To Google or?
Yeah, so I have, if you want to check out articles I've written for on my website, just go to beyondthedollar.co, not .com. It's now unfortunately forwarded to a scammy video, so please do not go to the .com. Yes, okay. So .co, beyondthedollar.co. And then I'm hanging out on Instagram quite a lot lately, so Instagram, Beyond the Dollar is my username.
Very cool. But yeah, so just keep an eye out for Sarah, and I will see you at FinCon, next week?
Yes, of course.
Awesome. Looking forward. There's so many things going on. I mean, there's conflicts all over the place. So are you doing a session of any kind?
I am. So I'm speaking about insurance and wills. I know, not the sexiest topic, but very important.
Is that something you've been writing about a lot?
Yeah. So I'm actually chatting. So I'm going to do the talk with another Andy Hill, Marriage, Kids, and Money podcast, which is another great one. And then my editor from Fabric. I don't think they don't think have anything in Canada yet, but I think, forgive me, I'm pretty sure there's one that's similar, where you can get like free wills made online.
Yeah.
So that's what they do, essentially, is help you create a free will. So we're going to be chatting about who needs one, what kind of life insurance, and all of those things.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. That's very informative. And then I'll probably just. Are you going to do a podcast on the stage?
I am not this year. I get very distracted by peripheral noise.
Yeah.
So I learned. Yeah, I learned that very early on, and so I thought I probably shouldn't, in case I'm interviewing somebody and I butcher it. So just out of respect for like the interviewee, I'm gonna say no.
I'm gonna be waving at everyone going by. It's like it's probably the worst idea for me. But I'm also excited. It's gonna be my 100th show, so I'm excited about doing that on stage. And yeah, awesome. So I'll see you next week, and thanks for coming on the show. And I'm looking forward to being on your show. I still have to book that in. Whenever I have time, probably in September. That would make a lot of sense, actually. So I will get to that. But it was so nice having you on the show and telling most of your story. There's so much more we could talk about. I know, drill down on China. Like, there's 8 years of China to talk about. In there we just, like, that was like 30 seconds. Like, I lived in China for 8 years. That's somebody's whole entire podcast. So, but it was great. I love to hear about where you came from, and it's so all over the place, and inspiring to anyone who's looking to have the non-stay in your city forever and buy a house and have kids life, as they try to teach us, right?
Yeah, and if you ever have any questions, like, feel free to email me, hello@beyondthedollar.co. I get a lot of emails, but I make sure to get through them. And if you do have like specific questions on like traveling and all of that, like, hit me up.
Yeah, because you've written a lot about that in the past as well, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, if anybody wants to live the Sarah Li Cain life, email. Awesome. So that was hello@beyondthedollar.co.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. I will see you next week.
All right. Thank you.
And that was episode 98 with Sarah Li Cain. If you like the podcast and want to see me get to episode 100, which is only 2 episodes away, please support the podcast by going to my Patreon site and becoming a patron. It's only a few bucks a week, but if enough people do it, it starts to add up. So head over to patreon.com/BoHumphreys if you're interested. That's it for this episode. I'll be back next week with episode 99, which will be all about money and travel, with special guest Beth McMillan, who will tell the story of how she saved up enough money and made the time in her life to take a 6-month honeymoon around the world.